Something seismic is happening in England. The Green Party, headed by its new leader, Zack Polanski, is surging. The Greens' membership has more than doubled in Polanski's first 2 months in the hot seat, and they are shaping up to be a significant force in British politics. While Nigel Farage's right-wing Reform UK still lead the polls, the Green wave is capitalising on frustration many have with the low-wage, low-investment model that has held back UK growth for the last 2 decades. Some in Britain's conservative media are already calling the Greens radical, hard left, or the old favourite politics of envy. But here's the twist. Greens' policies, including a wealth tax and renationalising utilities, are very popular with British voters, who have become increasingly frustrated at higher bills and record corporate profits, contributing to inflation. But why is this happening now? And will the next election come down to the Greens versus Reform UK? In just over a year, Keir Starmer has done the seemingly impossible. He's gone from winning a massive 174-seat majority to become one of the most unpopular PMs in British history, according to recent polls. He's also reversed the ambition of the Corbyn years and dragged Labour back to the political centre, where the party had success with Blair and Brown. Polanski has capitalised on Labour's rightward shift and positioned the Greens as the united home for progressive voters. And the uncertainty in Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana's new party has only strengthened his hand. That party could still become a progressive ally to the Greens, as many on the British left still hold Corbyn in high regard. But its takeoff has been slower and more turbulent than supporters hoped. Polanski, meanwhile, is proving to be one of the sharpest communicators in British politics. It's a style some analysts have compared to Zoran Mamdani: direct, grounded, and appealing to people's concerns about the cost of living. Polanski argues inequality and growing billionaire wealth have damaged the British economy. Many economists agree that increased inequality reduces the spending power of the majority, which can dampen aggregate demand. The Green surge is particularly pronounced among young voters. Recent polls show the party is polling exceptionally high among 18 to 25-year-olds. This is perhaps unsurprising though. Young people in England bore the brunt of austerity, from hundreds of youth centre closures under David Cameron to the introduction of the two-child benefit cap in 2017. On top of that, England's university tuition fees are notoriously high, in sharp contrast to the low or non-existent fees paid by many European students. And to compound this, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage recently suggested that the minimum wage for young people may be too high. This could be important in 2029, when 16 and 17-year-olds in England and Wales will vote for the first time. But there are other factors behind the Green surge. Firstly, many voters in 2024 just wanted to get the Tories out. After 14 years in government, the Conservatives oversaw rising inequality, huge cuts to public services, an explosion in food bank use, and an economically damaging Brexit to top it off. Austerity under the Cameron-Osborne years aimed to reduce the UK's debt, but by slashing spending in the economy, it did the opposite, and debt to GDP increased. The cruelest irony, though, was that taxpayers were billed for bailing out the banking system prior to 2010, and were then told they had been living beyond their means. Despite getting fewer votes than Jeremy Corbyn in both 2017 and 2019, Britain's first past the post system gave Starmer a huge majority in 2024. But he was also very different to the man who won the Labour leadership in 2020, with promises to stick with Corbynism. Over time, he became increasingly authoritarian and centrist, constantly backflipping on progressive promises. The slide of the Tories and Labour has coincided with growing support for Nigel Farage's Reform UK, aided by a media ecosystem that likes to keep immigration at the top of the agenda. Reform UK representatives are now regular fixtures in many British TV studios. Reform UK want much lower immigration, deregulation, and deep cuts to public spending. An increase in migration during the Boris Johnson years, combined with the housing of asylum seekers in hotels, has increased support for the party. Nevertheless, Reform UK's favoured economics would involve even deeper cuts than the Cameron-Osborne years, a strategy that typically produces volatility, rising inequality, and more strained public services. The party's paradox is that it claims to want to encourage entrepreneurs and investment, while also demanding a more distant relationship with the EU, the UK's most important market. They also propose cancelling the country's net zero commitments, which would undermine one of the fastest growing sectors of the British economy and a major source of long-term jobs, investment and energy independence. The Green Party advocates for a much closer relationship with the European Union, which they argue could be a significant driver of economic growth. But Brexiteers have a point that not everything has been smooth on the continent. Since the sovereign debt crisis, several countries faced weak investment and slow growth, partly due to austerity measures imposed under restrictive fiscal rules. Today, countries achieving the strongest growth in Europe, such as Poland and Spain, have done so by prioritising public investment and reducing their debt to GDP ratios, largely through economic expansion rather than cuts. This is why the Greens want to invest productively and reduce inequality. Research shows more equal countries tend to perform better across many metrics, including stability, health, trust, crime reduction, and overall well-being. They are also less likely to suffer from brain drain too. Countries with low inequality often have more robust political institutions too, as extreme wealth can disproportionately influence media and politics to preserve the status quo. Polanski is increasingly seen as the main threat to Britain's neoliberal order, with Labour centrists repeating right-wing criticisms of the Greens' Scandinavian-style spending plans. This despite a great British public in favour of nationalised utilities and weary of the profit-driven greedflation that has eroded living standards in recent years. The media have already started attacking the Greens, even though their proposals focus on the same kind of policies that help turn the Nordic countries into the happiest and some of the most entrepreneurial people in the world. But the Greens would face significant hurdles to implementing change. First, most of Britain's media leans right and will come at Polanski hard if the Greens get close to Reform UK in the polls. And this is a media where economics reporting is often criticised for its fixation on comparing the national finances to a household. Second, the Greens' plans will require robust state capacity. That's difficult in a country where the state has been hollowed out over the last 45 years, and where the private sector has grown used to a supply of lucrative government contracts. Thirdly, the UK Treasury, one of the most economically conservative institutions in the world, is likely to resist the Greens' agenda. Far more influential than its OECD peers, His Majesty's Treasury relies on models that tend to underestimate the multiplier effects of productive investment, earning it the nickname Treasury Brain in the British media. Its preference for low-spend, low-deficit budgets was further reinforced by the creation of the Office for Budget Responsibility by George Osborne in 2010, another institution whose caution around long-term investment acts as a major barrier to ambitious reform. The next election is in 2029, and it's difficult to say yet if it will be a showdown between Reform UK and the Greens. Much could depend on Starmer's leadership and whether someone from the Labour right takes over, like Wes Streeting, who isn't popular with the public, or someone from the more progressive side of the party, like Andy Burnham, who would have to win a seat first. Reform UK may be leading the polls, but they also suffer from a massive net favourability problem. This means they are vulnerable to tactical voting. What's clear is that Zack Polanski has shaken up British politics and got a complacent Labour right to think about the left more, rather than simply focusing on Nigel Farage. The Green Party are positioning themselves as the party of hope and equality. For the first time in a long time, Britain has a party boldly taking on the neoliberal status quo. Thanks very much for watching.